Hello and welcome to Pandoras Box. This is Kaleah. And today we are going to talk about emotional avoidance. Emotional avoidance is something that plagues a large majority of our population. Although it is prevalent in the world at large, it also is at the root of personality disorders such as narcissism and borderline. We live in an emotionally repressed society, and at the root of our emotional repression are addictions, mental health issues, character disorders, and physical issues. We eat, drink, drugs, sex, and work our way through our days in order to drown out the sounds of our inner cries. Although men and women handle emotions differently, both are a product of an emotionally repressed society. Women may cry more and be more in touch with how they feel, but there's still a lot of repression because most women also don't know how to be with their emotions in a healthy way. And there's still a lot of that emotional heaviness buried from childhood. At the first onslaught of painful emotions, the question is raised, how do I get out of pain? Or how do I get rid of this? There's often self-loathing rather than self-loving when it comes to accepting our emotional reality. People don't really want to feel the full spectrum of emotions in their emotional body. They want to feel good, and anything that feels bad is avoided at all cost. Our advertising models are all about what you need to buy or have in order to make you happy. Happiness is the elusive carrot that everybody seeks. They seek happiness through money, status, prestige, material possessions, relationships, and sex. Addictions are another avenue that people seek happiness by drowning out the cries of their pain. It isn't just our pain we run from, but our neurosis. Neurosis was actually a medical diagnosis back in the early part of the 1900s. But it was eliminated from the DSM, what we call the Diagnostic Manual, around 1944, probably because it was becoming so normal to be neurotic that it wasn't considered a mental illness anymore. Now it seems that the majority of our population, less a few enlightened souls, suffer from some kind of neurosis. Our neurosis is that voice in our head that is constantly finding fault with ourselves and the world around us. It is that voice that tells us that we should do this, or we should be doing that, or we shouldn't do this, or we shouldn't be doing that. The neurotic voice is constantly holding us up to a standard that is somewhere out there and not where we are. It's always making us wrong. The late Alexander Lowen, a psychiatrist who wrote the books Narcissism and Fear of Life, tells us that neurosis is fear of life. The neurotic person is afraid to open his heart to love, afraid to reach out or strike out, afraid to be fully himself. In our neurosis, we look for solutions out there in the world through buying something new or learning from the various self-help gurus what we should be doing to have what we want, or how to get rid of what we don't want. If we aren't finding happiness in this life, we might align with a religion that promises that we're going to find happiness in the next life, as long as we do everything right. We then become neurotic about doing the right thing. We distract ourselves with our busyness, working long hours, filling every moment of our day or zoning out on television, the internet, or some other distraction. We live to eat rather than eat to live, and pollute our bodies with substances that are marketed as food, but have little or no actual food value. We spend energy chasing dreams and either living in the past or fearing the future, but rarely ever are we here in the now. Underneath our busyness, our addictions and our distractions, we're sitting on a world of anxiety, fear, sadness, grief, frustration, dissatisfaction, anger, rage, depression, and loneliness, to name a few. These are the feelings most people don't want to feel. And yet, unlocking the emotions you are avoiding can be your key to health, to happiness, and true well-being. It may not be immediate, but our emotions are here to inform us of our inner reality. And if we continue to avoid our inner reality, we will be shut off to our true heart's desire. We will fail to listen when our inner reality informs us that something isn't right, that we aren't living true to ourselves. We're doing what we think we should and dodging our fears instead of doing what would truly bring us freedom and satisfaction. We may fear change and fear the unknown to the point we stay stuck in an undesirable reality. We may feel stuck in a dead-end relationship, job, or living situation and really need to make a change, but our fear keeps us stuck in what we know, even if it's misery. You may even have a life that looks pretty good from the outside and are convincing yourself that you have a good life. Still, something is missing. Something is wrong. You aren't really fulfilled. You may be struggling with depression and/or anxiety on a regular basis and don't know how to change your circumstances. Therapy doesn't help, and none of the seminars, workshops, or relationships you've tried are offering any kind of lasting solution either. You may be hyper-focused on your appearance, your body, the food you eat, the clothes you wear, and hope that if you achieve your ultimate attractiveness, then you will be happy. You may be hyper-focused on your health because it's poor. Or you may have some kind of autoimmune disease or condition that robs you of your vitality. You may be thinking, if only I had good health, then I would be happy. You may be hyper-focused on money, bills, and financial stress, believing if only you had more money, you could be happy. You may be lonely, isolated, sitting around at home night after night, wondering when you're going to meet the someone that's special or have closer, more meaningful relationships. You may have found your greatest companion in a bottle of alcohol, or a pint of ice cream, or a steady stream of weed. There are so many different ways we distract ourselves from our current reality. But what you need to realize is the only way to change your current reality is to accept it. Move deeper into it and face the emotions that are there. Many of you might be saying, Kaleah, there's no way I'm going to accept my current reality. I don't want to stay here. But let me make something very clear. Accepting your reality is one of the very best ways to change it. Because you have to move into the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that are creating your reality the way that it currently is. You have to remove that resistance. Often you won't make a change in your life because you are afraid to. The fear is overwhelming. So what do you think would happen if you actually moved into your fear and allowed yourself to feel it? Fear is one of the most powerful emotions we have. In fact, most of our darkest emotions are a product of fear. We live with our fear of inadequacy, our fear that we're not enough, our fear of failure, our fear of being abandoned, our fear of being rejected, our fear of not being attractive enough or sexy enough or smart enough or strong enough. Hatred is even a product of fear. You may find that you hate someone who has rejected you, abandoned you, or treated you poorly because you fear the behavior of the person who hurt you is directly related to your not being good enough. You may hate someone who finds you unworthy because it triggers your own fear that you are unworthy. All of these unworthiness and inadequacy fears are centered around your core wounds from childhood. These wounds are usually formed from birth to age 6, and many are completely unconscious, meaning you don't remember them. Nevertheless, they are there, running the show from the deep subconscious. You can clue into what your core wounds are by the reactions you have today to the things that trigger you. In my experience, those coming out of situations like narcissistic abuse, which I work a lot with, or other toxic relationships, are put in touch with their core wounds because they are highly activated. Those wounds are highly activated. The mistake most people make is believing all the pain and the fear that they're feeling in their body is new and directly the result of their toxic relationship or their current situation. But this is not the case. The pain and the fear are a product of core wounds that have been activated, or rather brought forth from the subconscious to your conscious awareness. You are now aware of the pain and the fear that you've been suppressing for ages. Think about the energy that it takes for the body to suppress all that emotion. It numbs you to life. It numbs you to joy and to the feeling of aliveness. And after all, isn't that what we're all seeking, is to feel alive? Everything we do, is it not to feel alive? To feel connected? The good news is you can really heal that which you are aware of. So with your pain and fear being highly activated and brought to the surface, you definitely become aware of it. When we become aware of the intense pain and fear within us, we need to first accept that it is our inner work to heal the pain, or rather transmute it. Just for the record, I've said in previous episodes that for empaths, much of what they're feeling may not be theirs. They may be actually picking up on the repressed pain and fear of the narcissist or other person who is a master at repressing. But if you didn't have your own repressed pain and fear, you wouldn't be a vibrational match for what you're feeling in that other person. You wouldn't likely have been attracted to that person in the first place. It's sad but true. One thing Alexander Lowen says is that we are destined to be attracted to partners where we relive the painful reality of our early childhood with our mother or father. He tends to focus on the opposite sex parent as being the dynamic we model in our relationships, but it can also be the same sex parent. The reality is, our first love is always the mother. And around the age of 3, for little girls, there can be a transferring of that love to the father, where it's normal for little girls to fall in love with their daddies and want to marry them. The same goes for boys who develop fantasies of marrying their mothers. And of course, most of us don't remember the intense emotions of our first loves and our first heartbreaks when we feel rejected by our mommies and our daddies. Loving parents never intend to reject the child, but are doing what they feel is right and appropriate, such as weaning a child from breastfeeding before he or she is ready, or kicking them out of the parent's bed and making them sleep alone, or dropping them off with strangers at a daycare center. You may have memories of having a happy and nurturing childhood and aren't really aware of any early childhood discord. But everyone is a product of our dysfunctional society. And our families often do what they feel is culturally appropriate, believing it is what is best for the child, but can create painful separation and rejection wounds for the child that cause that child to develop defenses to protect him or her from being hurt again. We all do our best, but our best is directly related to our own parenting and the programs that are running in our subconscious. The more aware we become of these programs, the more consciously we live our life. Many of the clients I've worked with do remember having very painful childhoods and having an abusive parent or parents. They remember a parent being mentally ill, alcohol or drug addicted, sick and unavailable, narcissistic, borderline, or workaholic. When you grow up with any of these kinds of circumstances, these extremely dysfunctional and toxic circumstances, you're destined to fall in love with someone where you have the same kind of emotional dynamic. Until you're able to resolve the deep, painful rejection and abandonment wounds in your subconscious, you're not going to change that pattern. Now, some of my clients who have grown up with very toxic parents end up marrying a kind-hearted and caring person. And they come to me to deal with a toxic parent or sibling, or worse yet, they're having an affair with someone who brings up all the same feelings that they had in early childhood with that toxic parent or parents. That dynamic is still playing out in some way in their lives, and often if they don't have it with the significant other, they are still attracted to a toxic lover. This is actually quite common in my experience. I've counseled countless women who are having an affair with a narcissist and feel extremely guilty because they have a loving husband and family at home. They felt they couldn't help themselves. The attraction to the narcissist was overpowering, and they found that they couldn't resist it. They felt an excitement and a connection they didn't have with their spouse. And it's easy to pass judgment on someone in such circumstances, but remember that one is destined to fall in love with someone where the same dynamic of early childhood is produced. If one marries someone who is nothing like her parents, she may report that he was kind to her, but she was never truly in love with him. She loves him. He's a good man, a good father, a good provider, but she never really felt the fireworks. Sex may be dull and unfulfilling. And when she meets the narcissist, it's romance, passion, fireworks. She can't resist the energy. It makes her feel alive. Now, we may attribute all of this to the charisma of the narcissist, but there's much more going on beneath the surface. There is a child for a moment in time fulfilling the unrequited love of the unavailable parent, but then being cast out again, thereby reenacting the original wound of rejection and abandonment. This is nature's way to bring it to the surface to be healed. And I've talked about this before, that when a child feels rejected or abandoned by the parent he or she is intensely connected with, the child assumes it is because there's something wrong with her. She is unworthy. She is unlovable. She is bad. And she feels shame and guilt. In adulthood, when the rejection and abandonment wound is activated, the result is feeling deep shame and guilt. One feels unworthy, bad, and unlovable. And these are the core wounds rising to the surface of her awareness. Unfortunately, modern-day psychology offers little help and support to heal these core wounds. They do an excellent job of probing into one's past and unearthing the wounds and the cause of the wounds, but not in actually healing them. And this is because modern psychology is a product of modern society, and modern society is deeply emotionally repressed. We are very mentally focused, and psychology is very mental. The definition of psychology is the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior. So where's emotion in this description? I always say that a psychologist can only take you as deep into your pain as he or she has dared to venture into his or her own pain. Otherwise, the psychologist will unconsciously guide you away from your pain and into a quick fix solution, such as medication or positive thinking or meditation, EMDR, EFT, or other techniques. And I'm not saying that these techniques don't have value and aren't good, but they're no substitute for actually moving into your pain and feeling it, which is the only way to truly heal it. I spent my adult life visiting different therapists with no real lasting results, only temporary fixes. I was lucky to find a very good therapist that helped me to cure my eating disorder when I was 19. He was a real gem, and I did have lasting results. However, I never truly healed my core wounds. In fact, I got into a very abusive relationship while I was in therapy. After my last long-term relationship ended over 7 years ago, I saw a therapist who wasn't a traditional licensed therapist and didn't follow traditional protocol. And she asked me to stop all other therapies, techniques, and reading of self-help materials while I was in treatment. She didn't want me being confused or continuing to seek outside solutions to my deep pain that would be conflicting to what she had to offer. And this happens too a lot with my clients. They may be seeing several different therapists at one time, reading different books, watching different YouTube videos, and trying different techniques that may clash with what I'm doing. In fact, I've had many clients tell me that what they have learned about narcissism from various YouTube videos that are being made from people who have had narcissistic relationships but don't have the years of experience in the field and the therapeutic experience helping thousands of people. And so their opinions are formed mostly on their own experiences. When they say a narcissist will do this, they're often saying the narcissist that I was involved with will do this or did this. So clients end up being very confused because there's so many different conflicting stories out there. There's so much different information that is conflicting. And of course, to be fair, that's in all fields. That's in everything. I mean, look at the health industry. It's crazy how many conflicting ideas of what you need to do to be healthy are out there. So back to my therapy. The therapist was all about getting me to tolerate my pain and giving me tools to be able to sit with it. She didn't psychoanalyze me, but rather helped me to unearth and allow my current painful reality to be there, taking out all the distractions. Other modalities of therapy were just distractions. I made more progress in my work with this therapist than any other therapist, other than the one who helped me to heal my eating disorder. She's retired now, but I've implemented what I learned in that therapeutic relationship into my own practice. I wasn't magically healed, but I slowly learned that my pain wasn't my enemy, and I needed to be able to welcome it and breathe through it rather than seek distractions from it. I faced the lion's share of my pain. When I found myself in painful circumstances, I could move through it much more quickly. I had a few more relationships after that ended very painfully, but I was able to end them quickly, knowing I was still attracting from the residual pain in my subconscious. These relationships never lasted long, which meant that I was catching on. I was still attracting dysfunctional men into my life, but whenever I experienced behavior I felt was crazy-making, I would immediately end the relationship and deal with the pain on my own. I haven't been in a committed relationship for years. I'm no longer attracted to dysfunctional men, and I haven't had much luck finding healthy, available men. But to be honest, I'm not looking very hard. I've grown to love myself and enjoy my own company. I just got back from a 3.5-month solo adventure traveling and living out of a minivan. If you're interested, you can read about these ventures at flyingsolo.me. I didn't even know there was a .me until I was looking to put together a website to catalog my ventures, but it was perfect. When we're no longer needy, seeking someone outside of ourselves to fill the emptiness within, we become very discerning about who we get involved with, and we will choose to be alone rather than to get involved with someone who has not done his or her inner work and can't take responsibility for his or her own issues. Having an extended period of time alone is part of the healing process, and when we decide to stop being in relationship with toxic and dysfunctional partners, we eliminate the lion's share of available partners because our society is so dysfunctional. We're healing, though, slowly but surely. So give society some credit. There is a lot of healing happening. Women are much more likely to seek therapy and do inner work than men, but more men are jumping on board the healing train, because they too are burned out on attracting toxic and dysfunctional partners. My counseling practice is still about 80% women and 20% men. And 50% of the men I work with are gay, so that means that about 10% of my counseling practice are straight men. My personal counseling practice may give some indication of the percentage of men who are willing to do the deep work necessary to be healthy and have healthy relationships. But I've also noticed that whenever I go to any kind of workshop or healing seminar, it's largely women, and the majority of men who come with a woman. So we can't make the mistake of believing because someone is in therapy or going to workshops that they are emotionally healthy and available. Healing work is hard work, and not for the faint of heart. Many will leave therapy when they get close to a breakthrough because there's so much pain involved, and the defenses to protect against feeling the pain are so strong that they end up projecting that onto the therapist and cutting that therapist off, saying, I don't like working with that person. If one has the courage to go forward and move through their pain, they will find so many rewards and have a much richer and more authentic experience of life. Authenticity is really the key here. Alexander Lowen says, quote, regardless of how well we perform, We are failures at people. I believe most of us sense the failure in ourselves. We are dimly aware of the pain, anguish, and despair that lies just below the surface. But we are determined to overcome our weaknesses, override our fears, and surmount our anxieties. This is why books on self-improvement and how to do it are so popular. Unfortunately, these efforts are bound to fail. Being a person is not something one can do. It's not a performance. It may require that we stop our frantic busyness, that we take time out to breathe and to feel. In the process, we may feel our pain, but if we have the courage to accept it, we may also have pleasure. If we can face our inner emptiness, we will find fulfillment. If we can go through our despair, we will discover joy. In this therapeutic understanding, we may need help." End quote. Being authentically yourself is really about removing everything that is superficial. It's about accepting all of your feelings and accepting where you are right now and who you are right now. It's about allowing yourself to be who you are rather than who you think you should be. It's about listening to the still, small voice within and following its guidance rather than following the expectations of others. Your feelings are never right, wrong, good, or bad. They simply are. The less you avoid your emotions and the more you embrace them, the more you will find your authentic self and live a life that is true, deep, and fulfilling. Thank you for listening. And for more information, please visit my websites at narcissismfree.com and pathbacktoself.com. Have a great day.